All right, so you know how this works. You send us the sources, and we dig in. We really go deep to pull out, like, the most interesting and useful stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about getting to those aha moments, without getting completely bogged down.
Yeah, and today we're diving into something I think a lot of people are going to find fascinating. Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
Yeah, classic. And we're working from audiobook excerpts you sent in, which adds a whole other dimension to it.
It really does. So our mission is to kind of unpack these laws, these principles of power in a way that's both efficient, but also like gets to the core of what Greene is saying.
And I think what's so interesting about this book is it sort of forces you to confront this fundamental human desire for power and the discomfort that comes with feeling powerless.
Yeah, and it's not always pretty, right? Like the book doesn't shy away from the more manipulative aspects of power.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it also highlights this really interesting shift in how power is exercised.
Mhm.
Open displays of dominance, the kind of like brute force approach.
Yeah.
It often backfires, especially in our current environment.
It's almost like the rules of the game have changed, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Green keeps coming back to this idea that we need a more nuanced, subtle approach.
It's almost like we're all living in some kind of modern day court, right? With all these like intricate rules and hidden agendas.
Precisely. That's a great analogy because the book constantly references the historical aristocratic court and the kind of like duplicitous world that existed there.
You had all of these layers of people vying for influence, right? Serving those above them while also trying to outmaneuver their peers.
Yeah, it was this constant game of trying to gain favor without making yourself a target.
It's like walking a tightrope.
Exactly. And, there's this concept that Green talks about called the courtier's dilemma, which really captures this tension. You're striving to ascend, but if your ambition is too obvious, well, you basically become a threat.
So it's all about being strategic, being indirect, working behind the scenes.
And that's what makes this so relevant to today. We have this expectation of fairness and transparency.
Right.
But at the same time, people are still using these, less visible, more calculated strategies to get ahead.
So how do we reconcile those two things? The need to appear ethical while also understanding that the game of power is often played in the shadows.
Well, that's what we're going to explore today.
Let's dive into one of the most well-known laws.
Yeah.
Law 1, never outshine the master.
Right. This one's a bit counterintuitive at first glance.
Yeah, because conventional wisdom says, showcase your talents, impress those above you.
But Green flips that on its head. He says, make those above you feel comfortably superior.
Don't make them feel threatened.
Exactly. Because when you outshine your master, you risk triggering their insecurities, their fears.
And the book's full of historical examples of what can happen when you violate this law.
Oh, yeah. Some pretty dramatic ones, too.
Like the story of Nicolas Fouquet and Louis XIV.
Oh, that's a great one.
I mean, Fouquet was the finance minister for Louis XIV, and he throws this incredibly lavish party, ostensibly to honor the king.
But come on, it was clearly a bit of a power move, too, right?
Especially after Mazarin's death, Fouquet probably saw an opportunity to position himself as the next big influencer.
Yeah, but the problem was the party was so extravagant,
Yeah.
so over the top, that it kind of overshadowed the king himself.
Which for someone like Louis XIV, with his, massive ego and need to be the center of attention.
Let's just say it didn't go over well.
Not at all. I mean, Fouquet ends up arrested, imprisoned, and then Louis goes and builds Versailles.
Right, which is an even grander, more opulent palace.
It's almost like Louis would say, okay, you want to see a party, I'll show you a party.
And the thing is, this isn't just about Louis being vain, right? This goes to a deeper point about power dynamics.
What do you mean?
When someone in a position of authority feels overshadowed or undervalued in their own domain,
Yeah.
it strikes at their core identity, their sense of control, and that can trigger some pretty intense reactions.
And that applies today, right? Like
Yeah.
even in a work environment, if you unintentionally make your boss feel like their authority is being challenged.
Yeah, you might face some serious consequences, even if your intentions were good.
So back to Fouquet and Louis. The lesson there is to really understand the psychology of the person in power.
Right, their motivations, their insecurities.
Because their actions might not always seem rational on the surface.
And then you have the even darker story of Caesar Borgia and Prince Manfredi.
Which takes this whole idea of not outshining the master to a whole other level.
Yeah, in this case, it's not even about a strategic power move. It's just pure vanity and insecurity on Borgia's part.
I mean, initially, Borgia spares Manfredi, right?
Right.
But then he has him imprisoned and ultimately murdered simply because Manfredi was charming and charismatic.
And that just goes to show the danger of inadvertently triggering those insecurities in people who wield power.
So if you're someone with, let's say, natural talent that might outshine those above you,
Right.
you have to be very careful, either steer clear of those with fragile egos or find ways to downplay your own brilliance.
And the book actually offers some practical advice for this.
Like what?
Well, there's flattery, of course, both the direct, praising their wisdom,
Yeah.
but also the more subtle kind. You deferring to their judgment, making them feel like the expert.
Acting a little naive, even.
Exactly. Making them feel like they need to guide you.
And this one's interesting, attributing your own good ideas to them.
Right. Make it seem like you're just building on their vision.
So it all comes back to that metaphor of the master as the sun.
You want to be a planet reflecting their light, not trying to become a sun yourself.
Okay. Let's move on to Law 3. Conceal your intentions.
This one is all about keeping people off balance by never revealing your true motives.
It's about being strategic about what you reveal and what you keep hidden.
And it's a tactic that's been used successfully for centuries.
The example that comes to mind is Bismarck and the whole war fever of 1850.
Oh, yeah, that's a perfect illustration.
Here you have Bismarck, this staunch Prussian nationalist, and he comes out and publicly argues against going to war with Austria,
Which seemed totally out of character.
even praising the Austrians.
And it's fascinating because he wasn't doing it out of some pacifist belief, right?
No, it was a calculated move.
He knew Prussia's military wasn't ready, and a failed war could have destroyed his career.
So he used this unexpected pacifist stance as a smokescreen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it worked brilliantly because everyone interpreted his actions through their existing framework.
They thought, well, he's a nationalist, so if he's against war, it must be for genuine reasons.
But they were completely wrong.
And in the meantime, Bismarck gains the king's trust, gets appointed minister, and eventually becomes prime minister.
And from that position of power, he's able to strengthen Prussia's military and eventually achieve his original goals.
It's like he played the long game through deception.
He diverted everyone's attention, created confusion,
Hmm?
and ultimately got what he wanted.
And this whole idea of the smoke screen is also illustrated perfectly by the story of the Yellow Kid.
Ah, yes, the con artist classic.
The fake hunting lodge, the rigged boxing match.
It's all about misdirection.
So they dangle this hunting lodge deal in front of Giselle, right?
This supposedly amazing opportunity.
And he gets so caught up in it that he completely overlooks all the red flags with the boxer. Gross.
Who's completely out of shape.
Right. But Giselle's greed makes him blind to the obvious.
The boxing match becomes the perfect distraction.
While he's busy dreaming of owning this hunting lodge, they're setting him up to lose all his money,
The hunting lodge was the smokescreen.
concealing their true intention of fleecing him through the fight.
So the lesson there is be wary of anything that seems too good to be true.
And always pay attention to those inconsistencies, those details that don't quite add up.
Moving on to Law 4. Always say less than necessary.
This one's all about the power of brevity.
Right. The less you say, the more powerful you appear.
It's almost counterintuitive, though, right? Like, you'd think that more information, more words would be better.
But Greene argues that the more you talk, the more commonplace you sound.
It's like you're diluting your message.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes leaving things unsaid, creating a sense of mystery,
Yeah.
can actually make you seem more intriguing, more authoritative.
The example from the court of Louis XIV is great.
Yeah.
You have all these nobles debating for days.
Yeah, these long-winded arguments.
But when it comes time to present to the king,
The two who make the most impact.
are the ones who are concise and to the point.
Right. And that's because brevity allows the listener to fill in the blanks.
They start to project their own interpretations onto what you've said.
And you maintain a sense of control.
So it's not just about saying less,
It's about choosing your words carefully, using silence strategically.
leaving the other person off balance, wondering what you're really thinking.
Now, this brings us to Law 5. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life.
This one is all about the importance of perception.
Your reputation is the foundation of your power,
It's what precedes you. It's what people believe about you.
and a strong reputation can be incredibly powerful.
It can intimidate enemies. It can win you allies. It can even prevent conflicts from happening in the first place.
But once your reputation is damaged,
It's very difficult to recover.
you become vulnerable to attack from all sides.
The story of Zhuge Liang during the War of the Three Kingdoms really illustrates this.
Oh yeah, facing an overwhelming enemy force with very few troops.
What does he do? He opens the city gates, removes all the flags, and just sits there playing his lute on the city wall.
It's an incredible display of confidence.
And it works because his opponent, Sima Yi, knows of Zhu Zhiliang's reputation for strategic brilliance.
So he thinks, this must be a trap. He wouldn't leave himself so exposed unless he had something up his sleeve.
And he retreats.
It's a victory won not by military might, but by the sheer force of reputation.
It shows you that a well-cultivated reputation can be a more powerful weapon than an army.
And the law also talks about the importance of actively shaping perceptions,
Not just defending your own reputation.
but also working to damage the reputations of your rivals.
It's a two-pronged approach.
Protect your own image while undermining those who threaten you.
Now let's talk about Law 6, court attention at all costs.
This one's all about visibility.
In the realm of power, what's unseen doesn't count.
You have to make yourself stand out, create a memorable image.
And this doesn't always mean being universally loved, right?
No, sometimes notoriety, even a bit of controversy.
It can be more advantageous than blending in.
The story of Mata Hari is a classic example,
She wasn't necessarily the most technically gifted dancer.
but she cultivated this incredibly alluring and mysterious persona.
This image of an exotic oriental dancer shrouded in secrecy, and people were fascinated.
The mystery itself became a source of her power,
They projected their own fantasies onto her,
and it made her incredibly wealthy and influential.
even when her true identity as a spy was revealed.
The legend of Mata Hari lived on.
And this law also emphasizes the importance of constantly renewing attention.
The public's attention span is short. You have to keep them engaged.
Adapt, evolve, create new spectacles.
Otherwise, you'll fade into obscurity.
So it's not enough to just grab attention.
You have to hold it.
Now, Law 7 is a bit more ethically ambiguous.
Yeah. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit.
This one is all about leveraging other people's talents and efforts.
It's about maximizing your own efficiency.
Because you only have so much time and energy.
And if you try to do everything yourself, you'll burn out.
And the book talks about the fate of the Teslas of the world.
The brilliant minds who made groundbreaking contributions but didn't always get the recognition they deserved.
And the suggestion is that to truly accrue power, you need to be adept at not just innovating, but also taking credit for those innovations.
So the strategies here can be a bit ruthless,
Like hiring skilled people and presenting their work as your own.
or finding ways to appropriate their ideas and claim them as yours.
It's a pragmatic approach to power, but it definitely raises ethical questions. Law 8 shifts the focus to control. Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary.
This one's about patience and strategy.
Instead of chasing after your goals.
You create a situation where your opponents come to you.
On your terms.
The story of Napoleon's escape from Elba is a great example.
He's exiled to this island seemingly defeated.
But he escapes, returns to France with a small army.
And the people rally to his side.
Even the army sent to arrest him ends up joining him.
He basically lured the European powers into a false sense of security.
And then used his enduring popularity in France to regain power,
So the lesson here is to control your own emotions,
while playing on the emotions of others,
especially their tendency to react impulsively,
and to create the illusion that your opponent is in control.
when in reality, you're pulling the strings.
Moving on to Law 9. Win through your actions, never through argument.
This one's about the power of demonstration over words.
Actions speak louder than words,
You can win an argument and still lose in the long run.
because arguments create resentment.
They put people on the defensive.
But when you demonstrate your abilities through your actions,
You leave no room for doubt.
and you earn respect.
The story of Michelangelo and the block of marble is a perfect illustration.
This supposedly unusable piece of marble.
And everyone's telling Michelangelo it's worthless
But he takes on the challenge.
and creates the David.
One of the most celebrated sculptures of all time.
He didn't need to argue his case.
The results spoke for themselves.
So it's about letting your actions prove your worth.
Not wasting time trying to convince people with words.
Law 10 takes a bit of a different angle. It's called infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky.
This one's about the importance of your associations.
Who you surround yourself with.
The idea is that emotional states can be as contagious as diseases,
You can catch someone else's misery.
and it can drag you down.
The story of Lola Montez is a cautionary tale.
This captivating woman who seemed to bring misfortune to all her lovers.
Failed ventures, financial ruin, even death.
It's a reminder that negativity can be incredibly infectious.
So choose your companions wisely.
Surround yourself with positive and successful people.
And avoid those who are constantly complaining or bringing you down.
Law 11 is all about maintaining your influence. Learn to keep others dependent on you
It's about making yourself indispensable.
so that others need you and rely on you.
And the book cautions against teaching people everything you know.
Because once they become self-sufficient,
They no longer need you.
the story of Bismarck's relationship with King William I is a great example.
Bismarck made himself so essential to the king's success.
That he became irreplaceable
He was the one who helped the king navigate political challenges.
and maintain his authority.
So the lesson here is to find ways to make yourself valuable to those in power.
Become the person they turn to for advice and support.
And never let them forget how much they need you.
Law 12 is a bit more deceptive. Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim.
It's about using genuine acts of kindness to mask your true intentions.
And it plays on the human tendency to reciprocate.
When someone does something nice for us,
We feel obligated to do something nice for them.
the story of Count Victor Lustig and Al Capone is a classic example.
Lustig promises to double Capone's money.
But then after 2 months, he returns the original amount with an apology.
Capone is completely thrown off guard,
He expects it to be conned,
and instead he's met with this seemingly honest gesture,
so he gives Lustig a reward.
not realizing that the entire thing was a setup.
Lustig's honesty was a calculated move to disarm Capone and achieve a different, smaller objective.
So the lesson here is that even the most ruthless people can be manipulated through their emotions.
Especially their desire to be seen as fair and generous.
Law 13 is about the art of asking for help. When asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude.
The idea is that people are more likely to help you if they see how it benefits them.
Appeals to emotion, like pity or guilt.
Often create resentment.
People don't like feeling obligated.
But if you can show them how helping you will also help them.
They're much more likely to be receptive.
The story of Joseph Duveen and J.P. Morgan illustrates this perfectly.
Duveen was an art dealer who wanted to sell to Morgan one of the wealthiest men in the world.
But he didn't just approach Morgan with a bunch of paintings.
He took the time to understand Morgan's tastes, his desires as a collector.
And he acquired pieces that he knew Morgan would want.
He appealed to Morgan's self-interest by fulfilling his collecting fantasies.
And it worked.
Morgan became one of Duveen's most loyal customers.
So the lesson here is to do your research.
Understand what motivates the person you're asking for help.
And frame your request in a way that aligns with their own goals.
Law 14 takes a more strategic approach to information gathering. Pose as a friend, work as a spy.
This one's about using relationships to gain an advantage.
Knowing your rivals, their weaknesses, their intentions.
Is crucial.
And one of the best ways to gather that information is through friendship.
The example of Queen Elizabeth I is fascinating.
She used courtship as a tool of power,
Not necessarily because she wanted to marry,
but because it allowed her to keep powerful men vying for her attention
preventing them from forming alliances against her.
and giving her valuable insights into their motives.
It was a brilliant strategy of using the guise of romance to gather intelligence and maintain control.
So the lesson here is to be strategic about your relationships.
Don't just befriend people randomly.
Choose your friends carefully and always be aware of the potential for gathering valuable information.
Law 15 is a bit more ruthless. Crush your enemy, totally.
This one's about eliminating threats decisively.
Leaving no room for revenge.
The argument is that if you're going to take down an enemy,
You have to do it completely.
otherwise they'll come back to haunt you.
The example of Cesar Borgia is a stark illustration.
He was ruthless in eliminating his opponents,
Not just defeating them militarily.
but making sure they were completely eradicated.
He understood that any lingering resentment could lead to future problems.
So he took no chances.
It's a harsh approach, but in the world of power, sometimes mercy is a liability.
Law 16 offers a more subtle tactic. Use absence to increase respect and honor.
This one's about the power of scarcity.
When something is readily available,
It loses its value.
but when it's rare or hard to obtain,
It becomes more desirable.
the same principle applies to people.
If you're constantly around,
People will take you for granted.
but if you make yourself scarce,
They'll start to miss you.
they'll appreciate your presence more.
Louis XIV was a master of this.
He would deliberately withdraw from court from time to time.
And his absence would create a sense of longing among the courtiers.
They would eagerly anticipate his return.
And his power would be reinforced.
So the lesson here is to be strategic about your availability.
Don't be afraid to step back from time to time.
Let people feel your absence.
It will make your presence all the more impactful.
Law 17 is about unpredictability. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability.
This one's about keeping your opponents guessing.
If they can predict your every move,
They can control you.
but if you're unpredictable,
If you keep them off balance,
they'll be afraid to act against you.
the Marquis de Sade is a rather extreme example,
But he cultivated a reputation for being utterly unpredictable.
and it instilled fear in those around him,
People were both fascinated and terrified by him.
and that fear gave him a certain kind of power
So the lesson here is to be willing to break patterns,
to do the unexpected.
to keep people guessing about your next move.
It'll make you seem more powerful and less vulnerable.
Law 18 offers a warning against isolation. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous.
This one's about the importance of connection and alliances,
It might seem counterintuitive,
but isolating yourself.
can actually make you weaker.
The story of Wu Zixu and the Kingdom of Wu is a cautionary tale,
Wu Zixu warned the king about the dangers of overexpansion,
and the threat posed by the Kingdom of Yu.
but the king ignored his advice.
He was arrogant and isolated in his own power,
And ultimately, the kingdom of Wu was conquered.
just as Wu Zixu had predicted.
So the lesson here is to stay connected,
To build alliances.
to be open to advice and information.
Don't let yourself become isolated and vulnerable.
Law 19 emphasizes the importance of understanding your audience. Know who you're dealing with. Do not offend the wrong person.
This one's about tailoring your approach to the specific individual you're dealing with.
Not everyone responds to the same strategies.
The story of Queen Christina of Sweden is a great example,
She abdicated her throne and went to Rome.
where she tried to influence French politics.
But she misjudged Cardinal Mazarin.
She was too blunt and overbearing.
And Mazarin was a master of subtlety and indirection.
He was offended by Christina's approach.
And she ended up being marginalized.
So the lesson here is to do your research
Understand the personality and the power dynamics,
before you engage with someone.
and adjust your strategy accordingly.
Law 20 is about strategic non-commitment. Do not commit to anyone.
This one's about maintaining your independence.
By not taking sides prematurely.
Let others fight for your favor.
Isabella d'Este was a master of this.
She ruled the city-state of Mantua during the Renaissance.
That time of constant conflict and intrigue.
But she managed to keep Mantua independent.
By skillfully playing different factions against each other.
She never fully committed to any one alliance.
And she used her charm and diplomacy to keep everyone on her side.
So the lesson here is to stay flexible.
Don't let yourself get locked into alliances that could limit your options.
Keep your options open and let others compete for your attention.
Law 21 is about using deception to your advantage. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark.
This one's about playing on people's egos.
Most people don't like to feel stupid.
So if you can make your opponent feel smarter than you,
They'll be less likely to suspect you of deception.
the Great Diamond Hoax of 1872 is a perfect example.
Two prospectors pretended to discover a massive diamond field
And they fooled some of the most experienced financiers in the world.
by acting like simple, uneducated country bumpkins.
They played the role of the sucker perfectly.
And their marks fell for it hook, line, and sinker.
So the lesson here is that sometimes the best way to deceive someone.
Is to make them feel superior.
Law 22 offers a surprising approach to dealing with a stronger opponent. Use the surrender tactic, transform weakness into power.
This one's about knowing when to yield.
Sometimes surrender can be a more strategic move than fighting.
Especially when you're outmatched.
Bertolt Brecht's appearance before the House Un-American Activities Committee is a great example.
He was a famous playwright with communist ties.
And he was summoned to testify before this very aggressive committee.
But instead of fighting back,
He adopted a stance of cooperation and even deference.
he answered their questions indirectly.
And he used an interpreter even though he spoke English fluently
He basically disarmed the committee.
by not giving them the confrontation they were expecting.
And he was able to leave the U.S. unscathed.
So the lesson here is that sometimes surrender can be a way to buy time
To regroup, to strategize.
and to ultimately achieve your goals without direct confrontation.
Law 23 emphasizes the importance of focus. Concentrate your forces.
This one's about directing your energy and resources strategically.
Don't spread yourself too thin.
The book draws parallels to military strategy.
Napoleon, for example, was a master of concentrating his forces at the enemy's weakest point.
And the law also highlights the importance of single-mindedness.
Don't try to pursue too many goals at once.
Focus on your most important objective.
And pour all your energy into achieving it.
And finally, Law 24 brings us back to the world of social dynamics. Play the perfect courtier.
This one's about mastering the art of indirection.
of flattering and yielding to superiors.
while still asserting your own power
It's about understanding the unspoken rules of the game.
and using them to your advantage,
The court is presented as a microcosm of power dynamics.
where social intelligence and strategic maneuvering are essential for survival and success.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power,
I think it's clear that these laws offer a unique and often unsettling perspective on the nature of power
they force us to confront the darker aspects of human nature.
and the often manipulative strategies that people use to get ahead,
But they also provide valuable insights into the dynamics of influence.
and the importance of understanding the psychology of those around us.
So as you go about your day-to-day life,
Keep these laws in mind
you might be surprised at how often you see them in action.
and how they could be used to navigate the complexities of the modern world.
And I'll leave you with this question.
Which of these laws do you think is the most relevant to your own life,
And how can you use it to achieve your goals?
while still maintaining your own ethical compass?
That's something to ponder.
Until next time.
Keep diving.